Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo podcast stream experience, whatever. I'm your host, the Harry Channel. And with me tonight, I have a lovely set of guests, including Mr. Adam. Say hi, Adam.
Hey. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Adam. DrFunctional.
What up, though?
Prospero.
Hello.
Serenity Star 13.
Hello.
And Sora Luna.
Hello.
Do any of you need to say a few words about your day, your week, your month? Just
well, we're
whatever.
Still setting up, so.
Oh, god damn it.
Sorry, Harry.
Well, I could make an announcement. I believe that Nigel's dead.
Yeah. If I can say one thing.
Sure.
I ordered a sandwich at Jersey Mike's, and I said, "Hey, dude, easy on the fucking juices." And holy shit, this dude was like fucking. It was like he had to waste all of the oil and juices, whatever the fuck they put in the juices. He fucking shot it all into my sandwich. So I had a Jersey Mike's sandwich, and it was juicy. It was pretty.
And had a soggy bottom.
Yeah, dude, it was soggy as dude. Yo,
nobody likes the soggy bottom.
Nobody likes soggy stuff. At least they didn't put onions on it, so we can put that out there.
What kind of sandwich did you order?
Turkey.
Nice.
Turkey provolone.
There's a Jersey Mike's. There are Jersey Mike's out here in California. I've seen a few of them just sort of pop up in the last few years. And I was thinking, so that's a sub shop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking their slogan could be the new substandard, but that doesn't sound very good.
That's
as long as you work with people that actually listen to what the fuck you say, it's good. But this dude was like,
it's hit or miss. There's one near us, and there were times that I was just like, okay, you've asked me 4 times what I want on the damn sandwich.
You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me.
So how many? Does anybody have a clue as to how many branches this franchise has?
I know they are all the way out here in Kentucky and West Virginia. I know that.
Oh, if they're in California, they're in Chicago, they're in North. Everywhere I've been, I've seen a Jersey Mike's, and I'm seeing Jimmy John's.
They're following you.
Regular.
I would assume they're in Jersey. Right?
Well, that's the.
I hope that's a given.
Joyzy.
It's in Joyzy.
In Joyzy.
I think it'd be hilarious if it's not in Jersey.
Nobody actually says it like that, Harry, but that's
gross ass sandwiches.
No, I almost doxed somebody. No, there was a lovely young lady that I knew from high school who used to say it like that. She was from Joyzy.
Joyzy.
She'd say Joyzy and Wada, and
God.
Yeah, she had a bad case of the Jersey accent.
That's such a cute accent. I really like it.
Yeah, go to school with it.
She was lovely though. No, she was lovely. So it's kind of hard for me to hate that. I mean, she was actually a friend of mine.
I'll take
I can get along with people when I choose to.
But I'd take a cute girl with a Jersey accent. For sure.
No, she's the young lady that I got to ride back from a math competition with in her convertible while everybody else was in the van.
Nice.
Hey, Harry,
going up Highway 1.
You just posited a question, and I usurped Serenity's normal role. There are I'm a sucker. 1,592 Jersey Mike's locations, with 124 more in development across the United States. In addition to 3 locations in Queensland, Australia, and 2 in Ontario.
Nice.
Man,
what?
Gerald Fogler
I've never even heard
goes
of
out and starts lusting after some kids, and suddenly
Why'd you write a
Subway is
receipt?
falling by the wayside.
I'm a Jimmy John's person. I prefer Jimmy John's.
Everyone's still talking about sandwiches. Get up the fuck off.
It happens. It's fine, Adam.
It's all because of you.
But I do think Nigel's dead though. So
Yay!
Are we gonna
that
have a
part of the drinking
funeral
game is going to
or
have to go by the
seance?
wayside. I don't know. It's just I haven't seen Nigel for over a week now.
Damn.
And
Well,
I
if
think
Nigel's
that
happy,
means.
well then he's
Nigel's
happy.
had babies,
Well, then
that's
he's
why.
happy in his world.
And then all the babies ate Nigel for sustenance, and then a whole bunch of tiny Nigels are going
A
to come
niggling
crawling
of
out of the
Nigel.
attic. A niggle of Nigels.
Nigels.
God, I hope not. Okay, sandwiches, dead rats. What else have we got before the show starts?
Wow, dude, we didn't even start. Did we start the show? Like, did we?
We
Yeah.
have.
We are
on the
live,
air.
yes.
Yeah, we are live.
Remember when you said hello, Adam?
Yeah.
If we had sandwiches and
Well, I mean, you can't
Jersey,
jump.
Mike.
You can't jump right to the hardcore stuff. You gotta give it time.
Let's see how
Ease
chat's
your way
doing.
in.
Where is chat? Oh, see, we've got Mr. Yes, aka Dr. Yes. Oh, let's see.
Doctor?
Keep damn.
Yes. Yeah.
Doctor?
Atheist icon. Terry Diamantis, or if that is his real name.
Yeah, Terry.
Oh, hey, Addie. Addie's here. Oh,
Yay, hey, Addie.
Yay. We've actually got people watching. And Elowen. Excellent.
An
Hello,
atheist-
Elowen,
Elowen.
fix your mic and come join us.
atheist
Please.
icon?
Anyway, yeah, things are going okay. Anything else before we start the actual show? Because we got a lot to get through.
Nope, I'm good.
Nope, we're good? Okay.
go.
All
all
right.
right, well, I hope you
Hold
got
on.
a sandwich and some chips.
I'm ready.
And there you
There we
go.
go.
So, and a
That better
soda
been
too.
beer.
Yeah, dude.
All right. Well,
What
we're
do you
going to
think,
skip
Functional?
that first.
Auntie Prospe needs her happy juice. It's probably Coca-Cola if I know you any.
Nana has her medicine. right at hand.
Okay, so we've got,
Monkey
we've
Josh
got
has got
several topics. Okay, settle down or I'm going to pull this podcast over. Okay, so
No,
a lot
they're
of it-
real, Dad.
we spend a lot of
That's
time
it.
talking
Back to
about
Winnipeg.
nuclear energy, and most of the time we talk about fission, which is in some ways more complicated, kind of at the inside part of it, because making things set up a controlled chain reaction so that neutrons basically break off other neutrons and cause all sorts of magic to occur is actually kind of complicated. By comparison, fusion, sort of simulating what goes on inside the sun, is relatively simple. The only problem is that you have a miniature sun that you're dealing with, and that's kind of difficult to do. So the normal way you try to go about handling this to create your little miniature sun on Earth is to use magnetic fields to try to contain the plasma as it basically fuses, So
Yeah, well-
usually the most successful stuff is a combination of deuterium, which is basically hydrogen with one neutron added. Because normal hydrogen is just a proton and an electron, or tritium, which basically has two extra neutrons added. It's really, really difficult. So the thing about fusion is it's hard to contain that stuff. Just the calculations involved of keeping that swirling mass of stuff ignited and not destroying the container you put it in is actually very hard. So, as they say here in this article, the joke about fusion energy is that it's 30 years away and always will be.
I ain't wrong. Well,
No,
hopefully they're
they're-
all wrong.
Well, hopefully they are wrong.
Yeah.
Because this, they're starting to see like real fusion power plants come along.
Yeah.
Or at least we're trying to actually, build these sorts of things. I'm going to read a little bit from this article, and then we'll move on to a follow-up. So, when British physicist Arthur Stanley Eddington first proposed in the 1920s that the sun and stars were powered by the fusion of hydrogen into helium, his idea sparked a rush of research and speculation into the possibility of bringing this energy source to Earth. It was not long before journalists and pulp fiction authors were predicting a time, surely not far away, when the world would be powered by simple fusion reactors requiring nothing more than abundant hydrogen from water. Obviously, these early predictions were more than a little off base. Vastly more is understood about the physics of fusion energy than in Eddington's day, yet commercial electricity generation from fusion still remains a goal rather than a reality. Decades of overly enthusiastic predictions have led to a long-running joke, yada, yada, yada. So, this thing here that you see in this picture is the THUR project, shown during construction. Now, this thing has a long history. This is a big international consortium to build a big old honkin' giant fusion reactor.
Okay, first off,
Yeah.
what they have constructed there, it looks like a giant fucking castle. Okay, so we obviously have like maybe months, 2 or 3 months before this thing is built. Okay, we got some time, ladies and gentlemen. Second off, holy shit, dude, we're tethered with our fucking. I don't know, man. This sounds weird.
It is weird. Just bear with me, okay? So, practical economic generation from fusion is not here yet. It's a solid bet that it will not arrive on the grid before the 2030s. Yet that reality is considerably closer, etc., etc. Meanwhile, the first reactor to achieve burn, that is self-sustained fusion, is currently under construction in France. Of course, why not the French? With operations to begin within the next few years. Now, this particular thing was actually proposed as an international consortium by Mikhail Gorbachev. To give you an idea of how long the international fusion circle jerk has been going on. And everybody keeps assuming that we're going to have to build this enormous thing, this enormous, big, complicated thing. So we've done a bunch of things over the years where we've tried using lasers and magnets and radio waves and just all kinds of different things. So I wanted to go over a little bit of the basics of how fusion works before we talk about more of the news. Fusion is a nuclear reaction in which 2 or more atomic nuclei combine to form 1 or more different atomic nuclei and often subatomic particles as well. Basically, in most of these transactions, whether you're pushing things together or splitting them apart, there's a little bit of something left over. And
Usually
that extra matter...
neutrinos.
Well, that extra matter, or neutrons, that extra matter basically gets released as photons, neutrinos, energetic neutrons, things like that. A certain amount of it ends up being lost as matter and turned directly into energy of some sort. The fusion of light elements releases energy due to the interplay of 2 opposing forces. The strong nuclear force, which holds protons and neutrons together in the nucleus, because they're all positively charged and they don't particularly want to be next to each other based on electric charge. So the strong force is basically the thing that holds them there. And the Coulomb force, which causes positively charged protons to repel each other. So they're constantly in this sort of push me, pull me, trying to, not fly apart at the seams. At the very short distance scales of atomic nuclei, the strong force overcomes Coulomb repulsion to bind the protons and neutrons together. When small nuclei are fused together, this increases the strong force nuclear binding, releasing energy in the form of radiation and or emission of subatomic particles. Larger nuclei, those above iron, do not release energy when they fuse, as the higher numbers of protons increase Coulomb repulsion. That's basically, you can't fuse anything past iron without shoving a bunch of energy into it.
Yeah.
Well, you can't really push somebody off.
So here's a lovely diagram. So you basically take, like I said, deuterium, which is hydrogen with an extra neutron, and helium-3, which is tritium, which is a proton and 2 neutrons. You push them together with a bunch of energy, and what you get is a helium nucleus plus a whole ton of energy. You get an energetic neutron, and you get a very energetic helium nucleus.
Which we still haven't been able to explain, I might add, that we don't know where this energy comes from. Well, it comes from the reaction, but there's nothing that is turning into the energy. It's almost like the subatomic particles that we're still learning about.
Get out of here, dude. That's the same thing as what's it? Number 15 or whatever, the fucking new fucking
Element.
You
Are you
see
talking
my
about
brain?
the new element that they were trying to find that they're hoping would be long lived, the giant one?
Look, you're lucky. I had to take my fucking communication.
I understand, man.
Do this shit, but yes, there was a new element, and it just was found. And you're going to tell me that this is not the type of element that we can use.
Okay, so the point with the element that was found, the interesting part and how that actually relates to what we're talking about, is it's a huge element that's much, much heavier than iron. Now, here they said there's two forces that are basically working in the nucleus. One is the strong nuclear force, and the other one is the Coulomb force. The Coulomb force makes it want to fly apart, right? So there's energy there, and then the strong nuclear force keeps it all held together. It's the difference in the forces that are required to hold the helium ion together is where the energy comes from. Because basically the power to keep the deuterium and the tritium together, when you fuse them, that extra energy that's left over that was required, because the helium is a heavier element, it doesn't require as much strong nuclear force to hold it together. That's where the extra energy comes from. Or did I lose everybody?
No,
Dude.
I was
I was
best I could.
Yeah.
I was listening with you.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is energy and matter are completely interchangeable. So there is a certain amount of energy that basically, it takes less energy to hold the helium together than it does to hold the two separate forms of hydrogen that were fused together to begin with. So that extra energy has to go somewhere, which basically gives us these energetic particles. Energy of movement, in this case, equals heat, which means that the plasma just gets hotter and hotter and hotter as these reactions go on.
And so how does the transference occur, if you don't mind my asking? Because physics was not my bailiwick.
The transference of the energy?
Of the energy to a grid.
So anytime you have something that's particularly hot, whether it's a nuclear pile or a giant bunch of fusion, the idea is you would use some sort of heat exchanger to drive a turbine.
Okay.
That part becomes very low tech.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I just thought that was the one thing kind of missing from the discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first we have to get these things to actually produce more heat than we put into them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to figure out a way to make it actually run reliably and predictably for more than a few fractions of a second, so that we can actually turn it into a commercial process.
There was a joke to have about having turning out a heated damn it.
Oh, they're having a heated exchange?
Yeah. Damn it. Okay. Never mind.
No,
I
see where you're going. But you notice, in terms of the big bada booms, like the things we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were fission devices. And they produced a ton of energy. But when you really want the big bada boom, like the Tsar bomb, that is a thermonuclear device that actually uses fusion. So you essentially prime a fusion reaction with the output of a small fission reaction. And the fusion reaction produces way more power on balance than just the little bit that's left over from turning, uranium into something a little smaller. We're talking about huge amounts of power, but this is a really complicated thing. So there are a number of different ways that they actually do this. The first deuterium-tritium reaction was achieved in 1932 at Cambridge, to give you an idea of how long we've been working on this. Though there are a number of methods by which fusion can be induced, consensus research into practical fusion energy has settled on magnetic confinement as the most promising for electric generation. In this method, magnetic fields are used to combine hydrogen gas, which is heated until electrons separate from their nuclei, forming a plasma and ionized soup of charged particles. Most fusion research employs a magnetic confinement device known as a tokamak. We'll skip this, but it was co-designed by Andrei Sakharov, who was the father of the Russian bomb and an incredibly brilliant man. Mm-hmm. During the 1950s, a tokamak is a toroid, think giant donut, vacuum vessel which uses powerful electromagnetics to magnets to confine and shape the plasma. The word tokamak is Russian acronym for toroidal confinement machine. So we're still trying to build these big, complicated, very expensive machines. And at the end of the day, we have to wonder, is this ever going to be commercially viable? Because it's kind of like the holy grail of energy production. Because the fuel is basically stuff we can get from seawater or mine from the surface of the moon, as opposed to there's only a finite amount of uranium we can get or anything else. This is really the only thing that we could literally just make power forever. We could go out into space and just have power, as long as there was water somewhere that we could get a hold of. So to say that this is an important thing to figure out would be an understatement.
Is there any way to interrupt those magnets?
To interrupt them?
Okay. From the standpoint of, since it's the magnetic force being used as containment.
Right.
It's quickly it's kind of like a pull start mower. Once you get it going, the internal plasma in combination working with the magnetic field theoretically would keep it going.
I don't think it's completely self-sustaining. You have to continue to put power into the magnets unless they're permanent magnets.
Every so long, yeah, it still needs a fuel source. But like you said, the point is to put in less power than you're getting out of it, and that's sort of...
So if you interrupted the magnets...
It would all go to shit. It would basically, the reaction would shut down.
Yeah, but it's not going to release... Okay, you know that people are going to ask these questions. I'm asking the happy idiot question.
Oh, God, I want you to ask these questions.
Frickin' sharks with frickin' plasma ray guns flying out of a reactor.
No. The most likely thing you'd do is damage the reactor. You're not going to have a big bada boom.
Oh, yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah, you're not going to have a big bada boom. You're not going to make a black hole that swallows the Earth. None of those things are a problem for this.
And this is heat fusion?
Well, yeah, you have to...
cold fusion?
Oh, yeah, no. Cold fusion was kind of a myth.
I thought so. I wanted to check because it was like it never kind of made sense to me that cold and energy aren't things you pair together and thought. And I'm serious. I am asking the dodo question here because this stuff is well above my pay grade.
Well, these reactors, we have, like it says, several dozen tokamaks in operation around the world. Let's say the first to demonstrate fusion at a significant scale, 10 megawatts, that's a lot of power, was the tokamak fusion test reactor at the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory, since shut down. The largest current one is the Joint European Torus in the UK. And let's see, that's 16 megawatts. A similar device in Japan is being upgraded. Smaller devices like the D3D National Fusion Facility, operated by the Department of Energy, by General Atomics in San Diego. There's a bunch of these little projects that have been set up.
Yeah, they're doing one in Massachusetts.
Right. The big problem with all of this, though, is that we just don't have materials that can stand up to the demands of this sort of stuff. And that's the one thing they're working on. The other thing is that they need to get better technology, because these huge expensive things, I have this sneaking suspicion that it will be a long time before they're actually efficient enough to use. So there's this little guy, which seems like it might be a step in the right direction, which is called Spark. And this fusion startup uses really powerful high temperature superconducting magnets, which was a technology that did not exist when they first started building THUR.
Your fellow science nerds in the waiting room.
Oh, SkepTok. Hey, Skep.
Hey, guys. I'm sorry I'm late. I completely lost track of the time. Please forgive me.
That's okay. I'm attempting to make nuclear fusion simple.
Yeah,
it's an uphill fight.
Cold fusion was a myth about palladium emitting energy from a relatively cold state. And cold is just an energy state. You add energy to a system, and something that's cold will get warmer, basically. And that's all coldness and warmth is. It's just a reflection of the energy state of something. And usually warmth is indicative of potential energy being converted into kinetic energy, into radiant energy.
Well, I think I was trying to explain this diagram here, not that diagram, this diagram. And I was busy explaining, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like deuterium,
and tritium
heavy water,
fusing.
and tritium coming together and emitting a few milli-electron volts. But that's a milli-electron volt. It's a thousandth of an electron volt per molecule.
Yeah, it adds up very, very quickly. And those aren't milli-electron volts; those are million electron volts.
Yes,
that's the big M.
Oh, is that the big? Oh, you're right. It is. It would be small m. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So what you end up with
right.
is very superheated hot helium and neutrons that.
It's just more zeros, Harry.
Yes,
it's just
exactly.
more. It's just more zeros. Jesus.
Well, there's a new reactor in town, and this one's actually small enough that it might turn into something that we could use sometime within our lifetime. The people on the stream, because as I said, it's been like 30 years ahead forever. Sorry, Sora.
It looks like a cube from the game Portal.
Is it
like
this?
Yeah, this little thing. It looks like it. It's pretty neat. I like it.
It's a donut.
Yeah, well, that's the Mr. Fusion fusion reactor, isn't
exactly.
it? Yeah.
So we have
finally.
the Spark reactor, SPARC, a startup chasing the dream of plentiful, safe, carbon-free electricity from fusion. The energy source of the sun has settled on a site, timetable, and key technology for building its compact reactor, flush with more than $200 million from investors, including Bill Gates. Boo! Breakthrough Energy. 3-year-old Commonwealth Fusion Systems announced today that later this year it will start to build its first test reactor, dubbed Spark, in a new facility in Devons, Massachusetts, not far from its current base in Cambridge. The company says the reactor would be the first in the world to produce more energy than is needed to run the reaction, could fire it up as soon as 2025. Suck it, the rest of the world. USA #1. Commonwealth and a rival UK company have also chosen the technology they think will let them leap ahead of the giant publicly funded THUR reactor under construction in France. Boo, France. And ever further ahead of a U.S. pilot plant being considered by the Department of Energy. So basically, capitalism always wins. High-temperature superconductors are really cool. The point being that this is the kind of thing that might actually work.
Magnet size is the limiter. At least that's what I remember from the fusion theory that I've studied. Mm-hmm. Is magnet power and size are everything. Plus, you have to have the capability of wicking the energy away, right?
Yeah.
And so this design offers some of the best efficiencies. It's probably the most efficient design in the world, isn't it? Right now, is anybody doing anything more efficient than this?
No, but that's also here in the article. It says it only needs liquid nitrogen to basically keep the magnets superconductive. So they're smaller, more powerful, and just
that's right.
A much stronger magnetic field, and a stronger magnetic field means denser confinement. As you increase the density, you basically force things toward fusion. This is the thing that we've been missing, because honestly, having a huge factory that costs billions and billions of dollars that breaks down all the time and you don't want something that's like on the level of making CERN. That's just too much to expect. But we honestly have something that looks like it could possibly work.
It's
so they
buildable. It's buildable.
Yeah. In the past decade, researchers have developed ways to deposit thin layers of superconducting rare earth barium copper oxide on metal tape. These tapes can be manufactured reliably in long lengths and perform best at about 10 Kelvin. But in terms of low temperature engineering, 10 Kelvin is a lot easier than 4 Kelvin. says magnet engineer John Smith of General Atomics.
That's not a linear relationship at all.
Yeah. The Rebco tapes can be bent, but being flat are challenging to wind into coils. You have to stop treating them like a wire and asking it to do things that wire does. Commonwealth has developed a cable with stacked layers of tape, twisting like candy cane stripes. The company believes the cables can carry enough current to generate a 20 Tesla field. That's 1.5 times stronger than the one in the giant castle that they're building. And magnet coils just a few meters across. Tokamak Energy takes a simpler, more compact approach, winding coils with the flat tape one on top of the other like a roll of Scotch tape. And there's obviously details, and we could spend a long, long time talking about it. I just think this is super fantastically exciting because I really didn't think that within my lifetime we might actually have working fusion power. I would have bet money on it.
20 Tesla is kind of a lot.
20 Tesla is kind of a lot. I'm trying to remember what the Earth's magnetic field is.
I'll tell you right quick.
It's not a lot.
It's orders of magnitude smaller.
Several.
Aren't you looking forward to the conspiracy theory that we're going to pull the Earth's magnetic core to the surface?
Yeah. That should be great. It's 30 microteslas. It's 31 millionths of 1 Tesla. That's the Earth's magnetic field.
And I think an MRI machine, which is super cooled with liquid helium, as I recall, those are what, 1 Tesla?
I'll tell you, MRI.
And they only have to basically zap your head and make the big ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk noise.
0.5 Tesla to 3.0 for the very specialized ones.
Yeah, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, it is pretty goddamn impressive. It really is.
All right. I want to kind of keep things going if that's okay. We have a little bit of space news because I know everybody comes here for the space news. There's a hypothesis. Ancient Earth was a water world. Across the ages, sea levels have risen and fallen with temperatures, but Earth's total surface water was always assumed to be constant. Now, evidence is mounting that some 3 billion to 4 billion years ago, the planet's oceans held nearly twice as much water, enough to submerge today's continents above the peak of Mount Everest. The flood could have primed the engine of plate tectonics and made it more difficult for life to start on land. So basically, where this water ends up in this hypothesis is this is the water that's basically trapped in the rocks, of which there is a lot of it. But early on, this was supposedly not trapped in the rocks, and it was free. So there's a debate about where life actually could have formed, whether it was undersea thermal vents or whether it was in ponds on land, nice, safe little ponds. And if there is no land upon which to have ponds, and you have a big churning sea diluting any kind of undersea vents that might form, it makes it a lot harder to say, okay, well, this is where the life came from. That's the gist of this article. Did anybody else take a look at this one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because it got real heavy into, well, it could have been this, then it could have been that, but then that would ruin the shallow water theory, and there's a lot more we need to look into. Was the takeaway that I got, because there was the business about the release of water from water heavy asteroids,
and comets,
as well as we don't know, because now we have the Earth science bumping against evolution theory on life origin. The idea of a much more shallow seas.
The $64 question, at least as far as I'm concerned, in understanding where life came from, is how what amount to fairly simple amino acids, like pyridine, for example, came to combine into more complicated amino acids and then basic proteins and then proteins that began to replicate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the, so what are the things that make that possible? What are the things that encourage that? Is a deep sea vent and the surrounding water around that, is that the place where that is more likely to happen? Well, what do we know about that? There's probably a lot of sulfur that's coming out of that vent. Well, sulfur comes out. What does sulfur do when it hits water? It makes H2SO4, doesn't it? Trust me, it does. H2SO4 is sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid tends to dissolve the types of chemicals that form amino acids and hence proteins and enzymes and hormones and things like that. In fact, it's very efficient of it. If you don't believe me, take some sulfuric acid and drop it on your skin.
No, thanks.
When you get back from the ER, tell me how it went. The thing that suggests to me that life probably happened in a less dynamic place, and we're being led down a primrose path by the fact that we found life that can survive around those hyperthermic vents. I think that's life that migrated there as a survival instinct because it was less hospitable for its predators, and it, essentially
adapted.
Barnacled onto it. Yeah, exactly. Adapted it, changed its pH over time, and blah blah blah. Became okay with the hot heat and the acidity of the water, and said, I think I'll hang out. And so, and good for them, Mazel tov. But as far
good
as
little entrepreneurs,
yes, exactly. Capitalism wins again, as you would say. So exactly. and then but then you go back to the calm pond of relatively unchanging, fairly neutral pH. That's where those big organic acids and other organic salts can start sliding around and get into that fortuitous configuration where all of a sudden one day one string of chemicals that looks like a prototype of RNA flops over against another one that's similar to it, and voila, they make a third. And life happens a few million years later.
Yeah, the shallow pond.
Right, exactly. So that's intuitive. That's the way my intuition goes. I have no proof for any of that. That's just my own diseased, hyper-aged brain spinning.
There are theories. Theories, Skep. For instance,
that's the Skep theory.
Well, there's the hypothesis that essentially, because we find basically a smudge of organic chemicals on a lot of ice in the Oort cloud.
Yes.
There is a lot of stuff that may be happening in the...
Pyridine is one of the chemicals, one of the organic chemicals we see, by the way.
Yeah, if you basically just take a lot of the primordial stuff that was in the atmosphere and you apply some kind of energy to it, whether it's a spark or UV or any number of different things, you will get organic chemistry. Organic chemistry happens at much lower temperatures too, like out in the Oort cloud. And so one of the theories is that the seeds of the organic molecules that created life on Earth may have formed out beyond Pluto, still not a planet, and then basically been deposited on the Earth. Or for all we know, life could have developed on Mars first and then ended up here, because there are Martian rocks on Earth.
Wow.
We've found pieces of Mars on Earth. So sometimes things go boom so badly that you can actually get fragments of things on other planets. In fact, there's a cell phone that you can buy. It's like the most expensive luxury designer cell phone there is. And they actually sell it, and it has tiny fragments of meteorites from different planets in them. And you pay over like tens of thousands of dollars for these phones. So how do you make it different? Well, you make it gold-plated, and you put a piece of Mars in it, because why not? I actually should bring that up for a fun section sometime. But this is pretty cool. Like I said, this is interesting, and the problem is it's going to be really hard to know. But if this is actually true, and they do the math and figure out that there was more water at that time, then all the people who have these other theories have to find a way to have their hypotheses still hold up.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. It's just falsification, which is fine. We have, let's see, we were going to do another thing, but I had to drop it for the interest of time. We were going to talk about an economics topic. And essentially, I read a story in the New Yorker. Why? I don't know, because I hate myself. And
I was just going to say, why'd you subject yourself to that?
well, it was annoying because I was firing up a virtual machine and it had Windows on it, and I was actually using the Windows Edge browser, and it said, here's a story, because this is beautiful because it doesn't have any of my browsing preferences coded in. This is a brand new virgin Windows 10 machine that has never been touched or sullied by me doing a real search on it. It thought this is what I needed to know. So the mainstream media decided that I needed to hear about this. And it will eventually load. Yes, so beautiful. Okay, and this is actually a story. Stop that.
God, that makes me crazy.
Oh, here, we can make this go away. I'll switch to a different browser. Oh, that doesn't actually solve the problem. Okay. Well, anyway.
Have you looked at this a number of times?
I have, and now they know
That's
I'm
probably why.
here.
Okay, hang on. I'll bring it up for you.
No, we're good. I got it.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Okay, so in this article, which is a very serious article about a bunch of people in trailer parks just getting shafted by investment bankers for the most part. Let's take a look at what's said here. And this is not the end. You know, a lot of times when we do streams and stuff, the article is the end point, right? So you read an article and go, well, that sucks. And then that's the end of the thing. So here tonight, this is the beginning of 8 different topics that are all interrelated, which will ultimately end in a conversation. We'll see if this little experiment actually works. So I'm gonna skip through a lot of this because they really are laying it on thickly.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, they went for the emotion.
Oh,
Is this an op-ed or an actual
it's the New
investigative
Yorker.
piece?
It's the New
it's
Yorker,
all
so it's
op-ed.
all op.
Oh, okay.
It's nothing but op. One day in October 2016, Carrie Presley was visiting her boyfriend, Ken Mills, like we care about these people's names, I'm sorry, when she received a phone call from a neighbor informing her that someone had just been shot outside her home. Presley lived with her 17-year-old daughter, Cheyenne, quelle surprise, in a 2-story clapboard house on Jackson Street in the northern part of Dubuque, Iowa. The neighborhood was notorious for its street crime, and Presley, who was, as she put it, in the housing community, she received Section 8 housing vouchers, had grown used to the shootings and break-ins that punctuated life there. After talking to Cheyenne, who was in tears, Presley rode with Mills back to her house, where police were sweeping the perimeter of her property. As Presley recalled, Mills looked at her and said, "We're not doing this anymore." It was decided that Presley and Cheyenne would move in with Mills and his son, Austin. Mills, a long-haul trucker and the father of 4 grown children, lived in a 3-bedroom, single-wide, that's a narrow mobile home, that's one of the cheaper ones, in the Table Mound Mobile Home Park, a quiet community of more than 400 mobile homes arranged in a tidy grid. The homes in the park are not as portable as the name implies. They've been placed on foundations and their hitches have been removed. From afar, they look a little like shipping containers sitting next to small rectangular lawns. In Iowa, park owners can choose whether to accept Section 8 vouchers, which are distributed to 5.2 million Americans, and many, including the owner of Table Mound, do not, citing the administrative burden. By moving, Presley would lose her government subsidy, and she and Cheyenne would have less space, but Presley told me I was sacrificing material goods for a sense of safety. So we've established that these are virtuous people and that they're basically being forced to live in these mobile homes. And then the bad, evil companies come along and start buying these things. And it does actually, they really are one of the few relatively cheap places for people to live in some places. I mean, I'm not trying to be unsympathetic at all, because there are a lot of retired people that live in like 55 and older only mobile home parks. And a number of them in California have certainly closed because that land is incredibly valuable. And what do you do with a manufactured home if you have no place to move it to? It's not that they can't be moved. Where does it go?
You sell it.
To who?
It gets scrapped.
I just sold one. I sold the one that Brenda and I lived in until about 5 years ago. there's a story in that, and I don't want to break away from that, but you can sell them. There's a lively secondary market for it, and we actually made about $4,000 on it.
Excellent.
Anyway,
a lot of times people have their homes. If the park goes away, they have no place to move these things to. That's the story that we're being told, right? So in the past decade, as income inequality has risen, sophisticated investors have turned to mobile home parks as a growing market. They see the parks as a reliable source of passive income, assets that generate steady returns and require little effort to maintain. Several of the world's largest investment services firms, such as the Blackstone Group, Apollo Global Management, and Stonebridge Capital Group, the funds they manage, have spent billions of dollars to buy mobile home communities from independent owners. And they say a bunch of stuff about how awesome it is. The gist of this article is a lot of these mobile home parks were owned by individuals or small groups. They sold out to these large investment firms, the investment firms wanting to make as much money as they can, because that's their reason for existing, would start doing things like charging for things that used to be free. So the first thing that happens is you end up getting the bill for the water and the garbage. And then, there's the fee and the extra fees, and they just keep coming. So there's like a fee to pay your rent for your slip or your slot or whatever they call it. They'll charge you a processing fee for doing that online. I mean, there's just a lot of these fees. Now, how do I know this? Because the place that I rent in Silicon Valley, so I don't have to drive around all the time, got bought by a thing kind of like this. Now, it wasn't a mobile home, but I'm reading this article and going, yeah, this all sounds incredibly familiar. And then the rates just go up because my total cost of renting that place went up almost 2.7 times over the course of 3 years. 2.7x.
Wow.
That in how many years?
3.
That's rapacious.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
But it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
It's a big fucking problem in urban areas. It's
fucking parabolic.
It is, and it's it's the variation within the country, and within states is freaking enormous. The individual I was in the argument with that brought up the Thomas Sowell is wrong. The other night in Monkey's Chat, was talking about a friend of theirs who the affordable housing bottom in Washington State, and I know where they must mean, was $1,400 a month. They were trying to build affordable housing in the town I grew up in outside of Boston, and it was $1,800 a month. I can't begin to tell you the amount of square footage that you can get in Richmond for $1,800 a month.
I would think you could do pretty well for $1,800 a month.
Yeah, you can. You can get a 3-bedroom apartment.
Really?
I mean, you could. Yeah, I mean, they're not great, but
okay.
But yeah, depending on the area.
Yeah.
You can get 2 bedrooms easily with about 775 square feet. Plus an outdoor space of some kind, a deck or a patio. In that range. And I've seen 3 bedrooms, so that if you were willing to split the cost with someone, you could be sitting pretty at only coughing up $900 and not be forced into Section 8. I just wonder whether this isn't part and parcel of forcing people on to government dependency.
Well, effectively, it does that.
Yeah.
It's not a good situation. I mean, I do feel for people, especially retired people who may not be able to sell the mobile home they have, because they are literally in a position where their mobile home is not mobile in any way, shape, or form, and they have a limited income.
You have to fix all the stuff yourself, Harry.
Yeah,
learn
and there's
how
people
to fix stuff.
Well, in this article, it's pretty much I had my choice between my cancer medicine and paying my fees.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I mean, I am sorry, but the main problem we wouldn't even have these things if the housing situation wasn't what it is, right? The housing situation is generally bad. There's a lot of places where there's not nearly enough housing, and there's certainly not enough housing that people can afford based on what they're earning. Now, solving that problem is actually really difficult. Now, some people think that the government's just going to step in and wave a magic wand, and that's going to solve all of the problems. And
Raise
of course,
the minimum wage. That's part
yeah,
of the
yeah, just raise the minimum wage.
argument.
That'll solve all the problems.
And it's oh god, that all that will do is drive your fees up everywhere.
Yeah, so I wanted to give you an example of a thing which, isn't entirely terrible, mind you, but this is just an example of what people try to do with this stuff. So this is about, in the wake of COVID-19, some California cities are introducing tenant protections as a service to readers don't care. Etsy. In the summer of 2019, Elizabeth Bell's apartment building in San Francisco's Mission District went up for sale, and real estate agents were soon giving tours to prospective developers. As fear of evictions or rent hikes sank in, Bell, 74, started getting heart palpitations, because of course we can't do a story like this without that. Her apartment was cheap, rent-controlled, a necessity for Bell, who supplements Social Security with gig translation work to make ends meet. There's a rail stop less than 2 blocks away, useful because Bell does not bicycle as easily as she used to, and she loves the place, which has a beautiful arch over the front door with cracked stained glass above the frame. The other residents are a diverse mix, longtime Latino families, one with a disabled son, low-income seniors like Bell, a young couple, all depend on rent control to live in the Mission, the historic home of San Francisco's Latino community, now riven by some of the city's most intense gentrification. Now, this is the narrative of San Francisco. Everybody wants to live there. Nobody wants the neighborhoods to be torn down and new higher density housing to be put in. Instead, they use these claims of gentrification as the boogeyman. And I'm not saying I want people to be homeless, mind you. I understand this is a shitty situation, but this is basically saying the government needs to protect me so that I can continue to live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. There's not a damn thing saying that she's
exactly
in some
the
sense
same
entitled.
narrative here. Is identical,
sure
word
it
for
is.
word.
So they have this thing, if forced to leave, Bell knew she could not afford to stay in San Francisco. Yeah, you don't have to stay in San Francisco. I'm
she
very
loves
bonded
it.
to the city, which I totally appreciate.
Yeah,
I
but
totally appreciate
that's
it.
what we're dealing with here is wants versus needs
versus can.
versus cans and can'ts. I mean, I don't want the woman moving to Oakland, okay?
What's wrong with Oakland? Oakland's beautiful. People think Oakland is a slum. It's not. Oakland has a really nasty part. Yeah, it has the part east of MacArthur, but the rest of Oakland, even down like Merritt, it's ethnic, but it's still okay.
Yeah, it's well, okay. So these people have come up with a kind of a scheme here. So to save the building, she and other tenants contacted housing advocates who eventually introduced them to the Mission Economic Development Agency, a longtime Bay Area nonprofit. Over the past few years, MEDA has emerged as a leader, don't care, in anti-gentrification efforts known as right to purchase policy, where local nonprofits obtain residential buildings to prevent development and displacement. The average income of residents in properties acquired by MEDA is more than 30% lower than the area's median income. Prior to the COVID-19 economic downturn, the average rent for a one-bedroom in San Francisco was $3,360 a month.
Jesus Christ.
To date, MEDA has acquired 32 buildings, more than 250 units, with 2 more on the way. This and other tenant protection policies are spreading across California. COVID-19 downturn caused unemployment rates, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Oakland and Berkeley have already introduced their own right to purchase policies pre-coronavirus, both of which gained urgency after the pandemic hit. Los Angeles extended eviction protections through the summer and, spurred by COVID-19, is considering its own right to purchase policy.
Harry, I have a question for you. What would be the effect of these policies?
Well, the effect of these policies, now it depends on the details, right? If you're basically at a minimum, when these nonprofits buy these things, they're essentially saying this property is now encased in amber. Mm-hmm. We're not going to do any improvements. We're not going to do any changes to it. We're just going to leave it exactly the way it is.
You artificially stifling demand.
Right, which is
artificially stifling
absolutely
demand. What will
great.
happen to price? What will happen
Well-
to price when you artificially stop demand?
Well, if you have rent control, nothing will happen to the price. What we're doing is we're just protecting a small
I
group
mean,
of
I'm
people.
talking about the real price. The real price. The real price will become artificially increased by the amount that you retard the demand. Price and demand always have a relationship.
Well, that's what's coming next.
You can't put your finger on one without moving the other. That's all I'm saying.
No, yeah, but we're actually going to talk a little bit about supply and demand because I think it's kind of important. But the other problem here is I understand this sounds great, but if, for instance, these people are allowed to buy it below the market value, that's a problem. And what they're really preventing people from doing is moving in, making these units better, making them more modern, creating new buildings that can house more people, that are more water efficient, all of the progress that people want.
These are the current occupants get to buy at below what they call the market value.
Well, this group comes in and buys it and basically maintains the property as it is.
Okay, yes, but they are subsidized by the government, right? So they pay a lower than market value price, and the government makes up the difference, or is the transaction to the current owner of the property depressed by the government force?
Well, the main problem here, leaving the people who live here aside for a moment, the main problem here is that you can't increase the housing supply when stuff like this goes on. So everybody who doesn't live in one of these places then pays a higher rate trying to find something, anything.
Yes.
It's like they've moved from wherever they went to school. They're going to get a place with 5 of their buddies, and they're going to work, 20 hours a day at a startup, hoping that they're going to retire when they're 30. That's the way this works.
Right.
And, hey, more power to you. I admire the entrepreneurial drive and spirit. That's a great thing to do when you're in your 20s and you don't have a relationship or a family or anything else. You've got nothing to risk, right? I mean, nothing to lose.
You can rent a tube apartment in the city for $700 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a shack that was falling down by the side of the freeway about 10 years ago when this first started getting like this. And I remember somebody spray painted on the side 500,000 K fixer upper.
Rooms to let.
But no, you're absolutely right. I wanted to take a look at supply and demand in a more rigorous sort of way because we often talk about it, but I don't know if everybody here is actually on board. And I'm going to try not to. I'm going to be very imprecise, and this is going to drive Skep crazy. But we can't. We don't have time to go.
I promise I won't.
Say's law.
I will not. I will not. I will not. I will keep my mouth shut.
No. I know you can do it. But I apologize for what's about to happen. So the law of supply is a microeconomic law that states that all other factors being equal, as the price of a good or service increases, the quantity of goods or services that suppliers offer will increase, and vice versa. The law of supply also says that as the price of an item goes up, suppliers will attempt to maximize their profits by increasing the quantity offered for sale. Meaning, if you incentivize people to make more stuff, they will make more stuff and offer it for sale. It's a fairly simple concept. And I think if we look back to the previous article, it's fairly obvious why I'm bringing this up. Things like rent control actually hurt the supply of housing. There's a strong demand for housing, but it's not being met.
So what does that do to the price of the remaining housing that is available?
Jacks it up.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, okay. It jacks it way up. And then, of course, there's also the law of demand, right? So this is the other side of the equation, not the supplier part. The law of demand is one of the most fundamental concepts in economics. It works with the law of supply to explain how market economies allocate resources and determine the prices of goods and services that we observe in everyday transactions. The law of demand states that the quantity purchased varies inversely with price. In other words, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. This occurs because of diminishing marginal utility. That is, consumers use the first units of an economic good they purchase to serve the most urgent needs first. So in the context of housing, you can only afford a certain amount of it, right? and you need like your basic living space. If housing was incredibly cheap, there would be no reason not to, instead of getting a 600 square foot house, to get like a 1,200 square foot place.
Right.
Have some room for that pool table, right? You know, so what people are able and willing to spend on something depends upon the price that's available. And housing is really no different. The fact that everybody needs a place to live doesn't really change the fact that the law of demand is still very much in play, because where you compromise is in quantity and quality.
And I presume there is a sweet spot for both of these, because as the price goes up, you're going to make more, but then you could conceivably glut the market or hit that.
No, then price will go down.
Yeah, but if you're trying to get it to set where your profits are in good shape, that's the sweet spot I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many PS5s do you make? You know, and at what price do you trying to hit that level? And this planned obsolescence aside, how many widgets do you make? And also, when do you start intruding in that utility cost analysis that the consumer is using to drive their demand? You know, where does this fall on my needs, wants?
Well, people will tell you that because housing is a basic need, that it's a place that the government can just step in and they can make things better. And you can do that in a number of different ways. One is through zoning, right? So you assume that zoning is going to solve all the problems, because zoning will allow you to say, no, you can only build, you can't build here unless you build a certain number of low-income units.
Yes.
Now, the thing about the market that people seem to forget is that prices are a signal in the market. And what prices increasing does is it basically is a way of letting sellers know, or suppliers know, that there's an opportunity to basically put more stuff out there. You know, because if, for instance, you had a 3,000 square foot house and you had a couple extra bedrooms, if the price got high enough, you might go, yeah, I don't particularly want roommates, but I can't pass this up.
Yeah.
And what will happen is you will find that as the price goes higher, more supply becomes available on the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hope I'm not being too pedantic about this, but the alternative is to say, oh, the government will just decide how many things we need.
Yeah,
and the government doesn't get those kinds of signals. It doesn't respond to the changes in market forces the way that the economy does.
They don't notice it until the
government responds in an adverse way.
Yeah, and a quick example, because NIMBY is going to factor into this, particularly with the housing. You build Section 8 housing next to a subdivision, the property value of that subdivision is going to decline. It is a guarantee, and the government won't notice it. The local government will property tax values because they won't be getting as much. They'll jack the rates in the property tax. Everybody in town pays for declining value in one area to compensate for another. And it part of it has to do with, and I won't go any farther than to state, the government makes Section 8 housing tailor-made to encourage irresponsibility, which is why property rates go down, because the places end up looking like shit because nobody takes care of anything that they get for free.
Well, I assume most of us here are acquainted with V. Monroe, the YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Now, V, he talks a lot about what would happen in the government-built buildings that some people sort of still live in, and how miserable they are in I guess, the part of Romania where his parents live.
The concrete caves.
Yeah, and it's just this horrible brutalist architecture, but nobody, and the walls are thin by design, so you can hear, if your neighbors were going to plot to overthrow the government, so you can turn them in. So they're just kind of miserable places, but nobody has much incentive to take care of anything because there's no ownership.
All right, there's no ownership, and if you suggest, as a friend of mine did, that residents be involved in the care and maintenance, particularly of the exterior of the building, you are flat out told that can't be done. It is the infantilizing of the poor. It's the utter infantilizing of the poor. I'm not talking about people who may have physical limitations in taking care of property. That can be a problem because there are certain standards that the government does have. They will inspect the property if you live in Section 8 housing. But the extent to which they care about the condition of it, of course, varies widely based on the area where the housing is and the quality of the inspectors. But because there was no accountability, no responsibility ever built in to here have this apartment on us, people respond accordingly. What's the incentive? What is the incentive? Now, there are people that do look after their property because they have pride of place. But you run a couple generations through housing like that, how long do you think even the concept of pride of place lasts?
Pride of ownership is super important.
Yeah, but this isn't ownership. This is free housing.
No, I know, but I think I have an example that will bring it home because I believe that the three oldest people here, Skep, Prospero, and I have houses. We own houses of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And until you own a house, you don't realize what goes into it. Like one of the things that I desperately need to do is go out and pressure wash the area on my house where the wood siding is. And I also, once I get it cleaned up and everything dries out, I need to go in and just take caulk and just run it down the joint between the pieces of wood siding. This is just one thing that that I need to do.
I have to stop you there because we definitely know, because people who own houses never stop bitching about it.
The point is you take care of your house all the freaking time. It's not like you own it, it owns you.
Yeah.
And I know you get it, but a lot of 20-somethings who work at Google and they take extra food home to their apartment in Silicon Valley. I mean, we're talking about people that probably couldn't blow up a tire, let alone figure out how to take care of a building.
Being a homeowner it requires a refined set of skills, and there are many skills. You have to be a little bit of an amateur plumber, a little bit of an amateur electrician, a little bit of an amateur contractor and builder. You have to be, if you're married to who I'm married to, you better be a fucking farmer. But, and
well, that's why condos are so popular with the millennial generation.
Yeah, because you don't have to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's the hyper specialization of society, it's fine for some areas.
No, and there's people who like living in cities, who like living in higher density things too. I mean, I totally get that that's fine. Oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure we lost Adam.
Yeah, he sounded
okay,
like he
so-
might be in pain.
Yeah, good night, Adam. I hope you feel better soon.
Good night, Adam.
good night, Adam.
Good night, Adam.
Good
Wherever
night, John.
you are.
But no, I don't. I know we do whine about it, but there's actually a hell of a lot of satisfaction that comes from taking care of something like that and learning that new skill. So it's not really so much a complaint as it is. It's like complaining about being sore after stacking a cord of wood. It's a really good kind of sore.
Yeah, exactly.
Up to a
You know,
Or
point.
moving a half a yard of dirt.
moving half a yard of
God damn.
Up to a point, you're right. Beyond a certain point and beyond a certain age, some people get weary of it.
Yeah.
And depending on whether you have outgrown the space you're in, or the space you're in becomes too unwieldy, like it is too large. Downsizing has become extremely popular, particularly among the older set, because home maintenance gets just a little bit easier because there's not as much square footage to have to manage, and it's why low maintenance communities are becoming popular. They're becoming popular among the working set as well.
Yeah, so they can work more.
But you're careful not to damage it. You still care for it as best you can, and you pay somebody to fix the rest that you can't get fixed.
Absolutely. You don't. If for some reason carrying a load of boxes in or something with a wheelie cart, the cart falls and punches a hole through the wallboard, you don't leave that hole there. You just
no. You go to Ace and you get that kit.
Or you pay the person that can seamlessly
somebody, because the kit does actually still show. But anyway, pride of place is really important, or pride of ownership, however you want to look at it. But there's, I wanted to take a look at Houston, Texas, and maybe Skep
place
has
with no zoning.
So Texas. So they don't. The government in Houston doesn't bother to have this pretension that they can figure out how much of everything people are going to need, and they don't say you have to build a certain amount of low-income housing.
I
end up with a
paper
hodgepodge
about this. I wrote a paper about Houston and zoning in graduate school. I kid you not.
Oh,
and
I believe you.
It was as to whether or not zoning would have a net salutary effect on cost of commercial real estate. And the argument in my paper, and my professor felt like it was a good one and gave me an A on the paper, was that zoning laws cause small inefficiencies to develop in the pricing model and artificially increase prices. And I just built that case for that.
Yeah, well, let me read just a little bit of that, because you're absolutely right, and I know you know a lot about this. I mean, you've been there. I've never been there. I just know about it as this mythical libertarian utopia. For many, as if
utopia is an interesting word to use with Houston.
I did that on purpose for you.
Yeah.
For many years, Houston has been Exhibit A for people looking for evidence that cutting away land use red tape leads to inclusivity and broad-based economic growth. The truth seems self-evident. The one place with no comprehensive development plan also has some of the lowest rents of any major city. Uber-libertarian Houston boosters have been particularly active in recent weeks, even reaching the pages of the New York Times op-ed page with a column by David Brooks, who praised the city's easy hodgepodge housing construction and the fact that it's less regulated, so it's easier to start a business. A piece at Market Urbanism, a website devoted to laissez-faire municipal governance, that's a very niche thing, credited the city's hands-off approach with allowing the city to keep up with shifting demands. Meaning, if the market says we need more housing, people build more housing, and they build it in the type that the market wants, not the kind that the government thinks should be there. And you think that this is some dysfunctional thing that won't sort itself out. But when you find that school teachers can't afford to live in the city and nobody wants to make that long commute, things will happen in the market. There will either be increase in the teacher's pay, or they will do something. The market always finds a way to meet whatever needs are actually there. I know I'm being very free market these days. I don't know what's gotten into me. It's true that Houston has grown massively in the past several years, due largely, but not entirely, to an energy boom that created hundreds of thousands of well-paid jobs. Well, Biden will put an end to that. If the city had more restrictive zoning codes, it would have taken longer and cost more to build enough housing to accommodate them. Whole ebooks have been written about the harm that NIMBYism, both codified and informal, have wreaked upon American cities. But it's also important to remember one very important thing about the geography of affordable cities. They tend to be much less dense already. Plotting median rents, as collected by Zillow, against the number of people per square mile shows a pretty long correlation between the two. So here's a graph. And we can see down here where it costs more to rent, that rents and population density seem to go hand in hand, almost as if growth in demand causes higher prices. I know.
Who would have thought? I'm shocked. Shocked, sir.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah. Okay.
Because to my mind, this is just if there's a lot more people who want housing, it's going to cost more.
Yeah, there's something illustrative that you haven't talked about with Houston, and it's something that's quite current with Houston. In fact, there was a decision in court just the other day about it. Okay, Houston is an upside-down city. The poor side is on the north side. It's a little bit unusual for cities in the United States. Usually south sides of cities are where the poverty is. And there are reasons for that we won't go into here. But the north side of the city is where the I-45 corridor, which is the big linking interstate between Dallas and Houston. It is one of the most traveled stretches of road on Earth. It is just absolutely thick with every kind of United States of Generica, Costco, Arby's, McDonald's, Chili's, Albertsons, just the classic stuff. It's just festooned all the way from Conroe, which is way, way on the north side of Houston, all the way into town, all the way until you get down to where the big concrete buildings are. So what has happened is there is, when that type of service industry economy inhabits a side of a city like it does on North Houston, you get people who want to live near where they work. All the clerks at the 7-Eleven stores, all the people who work at McDonald's. Sorry about that. That's somebody coming home. The dogs have to go greet them. And so everybody take a sip. So anyway, so all those people live up there, and now now that that's getting more and more developed, there's encroachment in toward the closer and closer to the freeway, but that now they want to widen the freeway, and they're sitting on a multi-billion-dollar grant from the federal government to widen the freeway, and the local judges and local politicians, led by the mayor of Houston, who is very woke, are coming out against this, saying we don't want to widen that because it's going to take away a lot of these businesses, put people out of work, and it's going to encroach on these trailer communities. That's what we call them down here. These mobile home communities, double wide communities that have grown up along the I-45 corridor, and it's going to put them out. And these are highly ethnic communities. And so what they're saying is that they're filing civil rights suits against the government. They're saying don't widen 45 because it's going to have a disparate impact on minorities. That's the way that they're framing the suit. And they just want a big court victory, basic court victory from one of the local judges, Harris County judge, and Houston is in Harris County mostly. And this Lina Hidalgo, Judge Lina Hidalgo, ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and their lawyers who are going to get rich off this suit, and are holding up beginning work on the I-45 corridor. And it's got a huge problem because I-45 essentially turns into a parking lot for 6 hours a day. It's some of the heaviest traffic in the United States. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous in the condition that it's in. I mean, you drive down to Houston certain times a day, you take your life in your hands. And so the upshot of all this is that in preventing the improvement of the road, and also artificially blunting the effect of natural market forces, saying businesses, you have to move here. This is a natural way the environment works. You're going to have to react to this. This is part of the cost of, existing and getting cranked into the overall microeconomic picture of price and demand. The government is stepping in, putting its thumb on the scale, and it's going to have a disastrous effect. But it's going to allow the mayor and Judge Hidalgo to preen around saying, look what we did for you, and get reelected and reelected. And that's it's a real serious problem down here right now.
It is a real serious problem. Unfortunately, a lot of this topic is just me listing problem after problem after problem. This is not a particularly uplifting thing to talk about, I'm afraid. But we're talking about it anyway.
Problems are things. I mean, if you're going to be aware of, your environment, if you want to understand reality, a lot of times that's taking a clear-eyed look at the things that aren't really right, the things that need attention, and understanding how we need to react to them to make those problems, to improve the situation.
Yeah, I love the fact that chat seems to get it. I really, even though I know this is a little dry and there's not a lot of people watching, I really appreciate the fact that chat's actually paying attention and that they get it. It makes me very happy.
Me too. Thank you, chat.
I would much rather have 12 people watching who are paying attention than 30 people who are watching planning some other activity.
I'm totally with you.
So in terms of the pressures that are on the market, since we've decided we're just going to open our southern border to anybody, let's take a look at immigration, shall we? Because these people all are going to need places to live. So I thought I would bring up some statistics about immigration in the United States. And by that, I mean this graph is probably the easiest way to look at it. So if you look at the immigrant share of the U.S. population, you go back to before 1900, you're looking at almost 15% because there was a lot of opportunity. The difference between then and now being that if you decided to come to the United States during this period of time and you didn't land here, get a job, and, make something of yourself, you died. There was nothing here. There was no social safety net to basically show up. The people who are showing up here now are immediately just, holding out their hand and going, money, please, housing, please. And I know I'm oversimplifying, but I don't know if most of you have seen some of the footage from Sweden or some of the stuff in Europe where some of the economic migrants have lit their places they're staying on fire because they don't think it's suitable for them. It seems to me that if you're claiming refugee status, you shouldn't be. You're coming from a place that's bad enough that it shouldn't be that bad by comparison. Or am I wrong?
I saw a thing in Finland that they're doing. They have a model thank you note for women to write to their rapist to thank them for raping them.
Oh, that's lovely. I think Sora was going to say something.
Oh, the trashing your place because you don't think trashing your free place because you feel that you're entitled to more is very similar to what people do here, where they complain like, "Why am I getting IKEA shit in my free apartment?"
Yeah, because a lot of people can only afford that.
And then they literally will take a chair and throw it through a window and protest.
Yeah, that's just, well, of course, if it was a window that they owned, or if they were going to be charged for it, they might not do that.
Well, how's that not a righteous statement of oppression?
Yeah.
But look at this this graph for a moment. Sorry,
trying to be
go
serious.
ahead.
No, I was just
No,
gonna
you're
say
right.
The UK has had the same issue because they have those container homes.
I think it was the UK that I was thinking of.
Yeah, that they've just had a terrible, and I watched one of those programmes where, oh, woe is me, I have but one window in my kitchen. And I thought, honey, you came from a shithole where most people don't have indoor plumbing. You, on your own with your children, 5 of them, and the baby has to sleep in my room. I know this might be interrupting your turning tricks or something, dear, but and I don't mean to be that cruel. There are people who, by no stretch, are all the poor evil and tear their shit up. None of that. and I don't mean to impugn, but this woman was whinging about housing that had been put together because she had come from the Middle East to Britain and didn't have any place to live in or any way to afford any place to live. Native Britons can't find housing, but they just keep allowing more and more people to come in.
Oh, and now they're telling women not to go out after, excuse me, after like 6 p.m. because there's too much
Men.
sexual assault going on.
They don't want men to go out.
But they never tell you what the people are committing the crimes are from and all that.
You're going full Bill Cosby on me there.
Well, this
Functional.
whole
That's
thing.
nice.
I feel like I'm having a stroke because it's happening all over the place, time and again, and it's like, stop it.
Well, that
Well, the
lunatic
point is we have to
queen.
find housing for these people because we're offering them benefits. And if
How
there
about
are
not letting
literally
them in?
hundreds of
Yeah, exactly. I'm with Prospero.
But we already have housing costs going so high that a lot of the people in the stream don't own houses, right? I mean, there's a big problem with home ownership in the United States, and letting in a lot more people to basically compete for the available spots, and we can only build so fast and in so many places, is not making the matter any better. Because the native population, actually has a we're not actually at the population replacement rate.
Nope.
So the fact that housing is scarce means it has to be from immigration.
Ah,
And you can see that the percentage of people who are basically showing up here is increasing all the time. It's
there are a lot of
and then
drawbacks.
you look at this statistic, unauthorized immigrants, 10.5 million. Well, that's 10.5 million people that need to be housed. So when people talk about illegal immigration being good for certain types of businesses, yeah, because they're externalizing the cost. They may be getting workers that work for very little money, but if you look at medical costs and subsidized housing and food stamps and every other damn thing, all that you're really doing is providing cheap labor to some employers, but producing a huge burden on the
Everyone else.
taxpayers.
and some employers, mind you, who are willing to break the law in order to lower their labor costs. Just putting that out there. Because
Well, and these people often get exploited too, because they're in a situation where you make a phone call, they might get kicked out of the country. There's nothing that power imbalance couldn't possibly be exploited.
never.
Never.
It's a rotten position. We would probably be better off picking a random zero and giving that money to some neutral third-party country to house these people than we are with them coming in, because it's a cascading problem. There's by no means do I think there's any kind of 1-to-1 ratio on illegal immigrants and the cost to our economy.
Well, it costs 10 times, last I checked, 10 times more to basically solve world poverty by moving people here than it does to basically spend money in other countries to try to make them better.
Yeah.
But it's part of the liberal nonsense again. These people are so condescending. Essentially what they're saying is there's no other country in the whole world that a person should be forced to live in other than the United States. They're all so bad that anybody who comes from any other place who says they're a refugee should just be let in, because we're just so much better than every other place. I think America is a wonderful place. America is a wonderful place, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other places, and it doesn't mean that every other country in the American continents is such a shithole that nobody should be forced to live there.
Yeah, Chile's kind of nice.
I mean, Venezuela sucks, obviously, and
it's
so
all the
does
welfare state.
Cuba.
It's the infantilizing of the poor, and it's the infantilizing of the economic migrant. You want to be an economic migrant, get in fucking line. I'm sorry. I'm just sign the
Or
goddamn
have a
gas book.
high skill that we need that we can utilize, then maybe we can fast track you. But yeah.
And of course, then we're brain draining all these other countries.
Fuck it, who cares?
Well, actually, I would prefer to see if they are capable, and some people are certainly limited by inherent characteristics, not race, mind you. I'm not being Eufio, if you're listening, this is not race realism.
None of us care about race. Race is not an interesting.
But they may be
thing,
they may be limited.
None of us care about you.
Like he knows what race realism is. Come on.
I know he was
You're
so
drunk.
wrong. But the certain thing, I'm sorry, IQ is a limiter as to where you can go to maximize your employment. It just simply is. And
training,
skill
too.
stack, training, skill stacks, that kind of thing. We do need a lot of manual labor, a whole lot of it. That need still exists, and that is fine work, and the people that do it are fine people. But we don't need 3 times the number of people that there are opportunities for employment.
No, but this is just going to make
times.
housing. This is just going to make housing worse. And as far as the immigration situation goes, we're not going to solve that in the next minus 23 seconds.
No.
So I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is another thing that's pushing a huge amount of demand for housing up.
Can I just quickly?
Real quickly.
So here where I live, what happened at the beginning of COVID was it was estimated between 38 and 42% of illegals left because the work dried up, right? So they were like, maybe I'll just go back home, and instead of wiring money back there, I'll try to pick something up there or whatever, what have you. It had an astounding impact on the housing market.
What was it? What was the impact?
I believe it was the lowest it went down by 22%.
What went down by 22%?
The average dollar value of a home in the city.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the demand just went through the toilet.
Valuation decreased by 22%.
Yeah, because what happens impacts to the rental market and the owner market are they fluctuate and they interact with one another, and so a new apartment just rental went down about 15 to 16%.
Do you happen to know that the vacancy rates? Because that's the number.
The vacancy rates have always been super huge because, again, another problem we have here in Canada is we have temporary foreign worker programs. We tend to not care about illegal citizens that much.
No. Vacancy rates were probably low originally, and now they're high.
No. Because there's a lot of condos that are owned, especially on the waterfront, but don't actually have an occupant. They have a temporary resident for a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there.
Oh, okay.
And they're rented out by mostly China and
that's a different
investment.
That's a different class of housing than what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Hey, we're talking about basic apartment rentals, so I mean, my guess is there were very few vacant cheap apartments prior to COVID.
Hence the high price.
Yeah, and then and then prices began to fall and more vacancies would appear because
like I said, 15
the illegals
16%.
fucked off back home.
Yeah.
No, more and more vacancies appeared, and then prices fell. Trust me.
People who were renting or who were using previous rental units as Airbnbs were like, well, shit, this is not as lucrative as I once thought, so I'm going to go back to a rental. And it did go down, but
well, I'm going to move on to the next issue. Yeah. That's a good point. I'm just trying to keep things moving.
Good God.
So another thing is the number of single-person households in the United States, 1960 to 2020. Now, this is kind of a lot.
Jesus, it's incredible. The number per million. These are
36.48 million single-person households in the United States.
Can you get rid of the atheist icon quote, because I want to see the bottom part of the graph?
Oh, sorry. I'm. I think your new job should be to remind me to click on things to make them go away.
No worries. I just want to be able to see the graph in its entirety.
You're
Okay, so
fine.
it starts at about 1916, goes to about today. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you expect a steady increase just because of life expectancy going up. People tend to. Anyway, go with the article first.
One of the things that I noticed most about this graph, there is a single phase change in the slope of that graph. Around 1985, the slope of that graph goes from a steep increase to a much more gradual increase. Rates interest me, being a I like calculus. Calculus is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see a rate change like that, I think it's almost like a discontinuous function to me. If you know what I'm saying, it's like there's two different functions going on. And by that, I guess I mean that the set of sociological factors that go into making those end coordinates be there has fundamentally changed between 1985 and 1991. What happened between 1985 and 91? And don't say Coldplay. What happened then?
I happened.
They could have seriously. What could have changed that?
I'm thinking like the expansion of wealth, the prosperity of the middle class.
What thing that you can identify in history happened around then?
The internet.
I was busy like surfing out of my mama's canal.
Harry's homing in on it. Say it again, Harry.
The internet.
Yeah.
Oh, son of a bitch! Yeah.
What happened around at the end of the 1980s and the beginning of 1990s was that all of a sudden the world came into our homes, and people's interests began to divert away from, I believe, close personal relationships and a relationship essentially with their electronic selves. Now, between 1991 and 2000, I would say that those were the email years, and the MySpace years, and then around 2001, you have the quickening. Wasn't really the birth, but the quickening of social media, and around 2005 or 2007, the trend is firmly established, and the reason for that, I think, is that the world has come into our homes, and people want some alone time with their machine, and that's become more and more important to enough people to where they eschew permanent personal relationships and choose to live alone and have their relationships online.
But
I think there's other social factors too. But sorry, you go ahead.
I'm not saying that there aren't other social factors. I'm saying that is a big one.
No, that's one of them, and there's others too.
There is a steep rise between 1960, very steep rise in 1985 in single-person households.
It's really electrifying.
Because the disposable income went up dramatically during that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's exactly
and also the other thing is labor-saving devices became more and more common. So it very much used to be the case that a housewife, sorry for using the old term, would work like 14 hours a day just trying to keep a house up. And it took, basically a guy going off and working in the mines and a woman staying home working her ass off. And
vacuuming the house in a dress.
Right. The two of them managed to get by, at that point. But labor-saving devices, being able to buy things on credit, made a huge impact because nobody could afford that newfangled washing machine or dishwasher, God forbid. And they made it available to buy it on credit.
Women in the workplace too, Harry.
Oh yeah, no, that was one of the things I was thinking of. But there was one other that slowed the rise of single-person households. Dramatic.
That's rising housing costs.
Drop in the birth rate. When did the birth rate begin to drop?
But where we are right now is,
we're talking post-baby boom?
We've got a lot of people living by themselves, which definitely changes the housing market.
Oh yeah.
You know, it has a profound effect on the housing market. There's a lot of demand for like a place that's just big enough for somebody making an income by themselves, or not even that.
Yeah, no, women in the workplace would have increased that.
Well, women in the workplace basically liberation did change a lot of that, and that part of that is because of the labor-saving devices again.
Yeah.
Once it no longer became necessary for women to work 14 hours a day at home and have a husband,
Yeah.
everything changed for everybody.
And
societal norms also made
sexual
it
revolution
better.
made it
Societal
so that
norms.
women didn't marry.
But I think technology led that, and society just sort of kept up. Because I think if it was still a necessity just for two people, they had to get together in order just to survive well. I don't think societal norms would have changed anything.
Also, tidbit.
Yeah.
The downturn would have started in the late 80s, which would have been when Black Monday happened. So that might be why that downturn happened, is because it took 2 years for the market to rebound itself after 1987.
Oh, you can see market correction in this.
Yeah.
Because, the 2008
right there, yeah. The
Drove
2008 market crash.
drove people home to mom and dad.
Yeah.
But I think that's what actually did it in the early 90s, was the fact that people were still recovering. I don't think the internet had anything to do with it.
Well, no. I mean, but there is it has continued to, interesting.
There's your crude birth rate. That is the birth rate from 1880 or 1800 to 2020 in the United States.
Yeah, but the number of single households is still increasing, even with a decreasing birth rate.
Yep.
Longevity.
Because then that would be like an increased immigration factor.
You did have a big increase in birth rate.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
From about 1939 to about 1952. And then
what do we do to address it?
Slide off again.
Well, I want to talk to the people that don't own houses yet. I want to actually hear what all of them have to say. What do you think we can do to make things better? Should there be tiny houses, in-law units? Do we need to force people to tear down houses and build more housing? What do you think we should do?
The problem is that, and at least with my generation and younger, that's when the internet does take a toll, because it has created so many fucking selfish people who think because they had a bad life because their parents sucked, and in many cases their parents didn't suck, because I know some people who talk like that and their parents were not bad. They don't want to have kids because that means that they may take the chance of maybe screwing the kid up. There's a level of selfishness that's come into everything that's ridiculous.
Or is it a false narrative of perfection?
That can do it too, at least.
Because they think that every quirk and every neuroses that they possess is somehow or another wired into them by their parents.
Well, I mean, project much.
Yeah, which helps them duck personal responsibility.
That's a good thought.
Well, I have a friend of a friend who's in his mid-20s, and I was hanging out with the group this evening, and he called me neurodivergent, and I nearly slapped him. I'm like, I'm not neurodivergent, you stupid motherfucker. I am not neurotypical. I'm a person with problems, just like you are. Stop using bad terms. But that's the thing. Everybody, it's something.
Yeah, everybody's a victim.
Yeah, because everybody wants to be a victim. Let's rephrase. Let's go down that path.
To get back to Harry's question, what should we do about this? Here's what I think. Here's what I think we should do about this. I think we should let the market solve it for us. If we will take our hands off the scale will balance more fairly than all the ideas any politician ever had, regardless of his relationship with his parents.
I mean, the government interference in housing.
No bueno.
No bueno, because we have had an increasing issue with housing, wages, rent control, wage and price control, ever since Franklin Roosevelt took office, because I mean, Woodrow Wilson's wet dream came true. The control, and particularly since the introduction of the minimum wage, which is unbelievably important in how much market fucketry it did, because it created a base wage scale, an artificial base wage scale that every other motherfucking thing has been, pardon my French, but it pisses me off, predicated on. And I mean, all the other factors do fit in, but creating artificial artifice like that. Artificial artifice. Listen to me. Who's humming?
Sorry, I'm messing with my dog. Sorry.
That's okay.
Dogs will do that to you.
I was like, ooh, I'm hearing music.
What? Okay, quick question.
Yes.
How would you deal with a market that, not even a market, but the market itself may be high or low, whatever, right? However, people will pay like 50% or more above market price, above asking price, and which artificially changes the value of a neighborhood.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No,
Okay.
it doesn't, Dora.
What they pay is the price, is what
I
Skep's
love
gonna
you,
say.
but yeah, exactly what Harry said.
Okay,
Well,
I
that's
have
okay.
a,
I can be
actually I can address
No,
no, I
Sora,
can address Sora's point in what I think is a useful way, because I forgot to mention something. When we're talking about immigration, I shouldn't always assume that it's at the bottom. Okay, it's not just low income people. There are a lot of people from Hong Kong and Taiwan and people with a lot of money who've moved into markets in where you live and where I live, and have driven up prices because they have a lot of disposable income and they're flush with cash. And they come into these markets, and yes, they do drive the prices up. But Skep's point is that, yes, that is the new market price.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's
It's
all.
just a
That's all I was
semantic
saying. I wasn't saying that you were wrong at all, Sora. I never would say that, because I'm trained by women. I'm a product of my training.
So Sora,
I can
tell you that a friend of mine, his parents sold a townhouse, not a townhouse, a duplex. They're half of a duplex, so they don't even own all the walls, right? They're sharing one wall, and they ended up selling a duplex that was, I think, I want to say 1,200 square feet, in Cupertino for $1.75 million.
1,200 square foot of a duplex.
For $1.75
and I'll bet the yard was 3 or 4 acres too, wasn't it?
And part of the way this works is
That's the cost of an apartment downtown here. It's not that shocking.
Yeah,
Wow,
you have to get essentially a lot of Cupertino is basically wealthy Asians who've moved there from other countries,
right?
And you have to be very I'll tell you more about that after the stream. But when you get a realtor in a place like Cupertino, you need to make sure that you find one that isn't necessarily going to be talking a Chinese dialect behind your back to the prospective buyers, shall we say, when you're trying to sell, because it's very, very tight in terms of the way the real estate markets work. It's like so many people have moved there with, like Hong Kong money getting out while they could. And I know this is the case in the Vancouver area as well.
100%.
Yeah. So immigration can affect different parts of the housing market. It isn't just, poor people on Section 8.
So then, would you consider a gross misuse of government power to enable basically a law that states if you have empty, we have what's called an empty home tax here. I'm not sure if it has been enabled, because you basically have to prove every year. You have to submit a documentation that says, actually, I have lived here all year. It's just an online form. If you don't, you have to pay a tax for an empty home. And they did this specifically because people complained that, well, I can't buy. I want to go into a neighborhood, say even if you can afford it, but there isn't availability. But then you look around, all your neighbors, the houses, apartments, they're empty. It's not like you don't know your neighbors, is you don't physically have any neighbors.
Why are they empty?
Because they were purchased by overseas buyers, and they might come in for the summer. Yeah, and that's it. And so it was this empty houses tax was implemented. I think if you have to be here for 6 months of the year, something like that, and then you have to pay just them has to pay a tax. Everybody else has to prove that they live in the home that they live in.
No, this is terrible.
We're as a nation, because we're a really good example of an outside influence intentionally fucking over our markets.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really bad. And a solution for Canada would be cut that shit out.
But it's not fucking over if you're the person who gets paid the higher price for the property. So if you're the person that's lived there for 40 years and then you get $1.75 million and you use that to buy a place, say, in Laurel, Mississippi, and then you take the balance of that and pocket it, that's a great deal for you. You should love the fact that more sellers with lots of cash are coming into the market.
Slight interjection. The empty home tax is 1.25. Most homes will not be subject to tax, as does not apply to principal residences or homes rented for at least 6 months of the year.
1.25 what?
That's of Vancouver's. Like that's
1.25% of the assessed value.
I assume. Yep.
Or is it 1.25? Is it 1.25 mils, which is what I bet it might be? I can't imagine.
It's
taking 1% of the home's value every year.
1.25 of the property's 2020 assessed taxable value.
Holy shit!
Yeah, and we're gonna make sure nobody speculates in stuff.
There was a huge this is racist, and it was really funny because the first person to bring this to the table was a Chinese Canadian woman, and I'm most likely it was done by her because to avoid the cry of racism. I have this feeling she must have been paid to be the first person to put this on the table. That's my conspiracy theory.
To
address your comment earlier, nobody owned these houses before. A lot of it is new development. A lot of it is condos.
Exactly. This is condos that are going up
they were built
100% sold before they even break ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so if I'm a developer, hold on.
Because they were also invested by Chinese corporate interests.
I understand. But look at the supply side of it. Everybody wants to look at the demand side. Let's look at the supply side. So the supply side of this, I'm a developer, right? And I'm going to build condominiums. And so, I borrow money from the bank in order to get the supplies. There's this whole venture. I got my balance sheet all set up. Everything's great. And then something happens to the economy where suddenly the demand for things goes down and I'm stuck with a bunch of apartments that I can't sell and that nobody lives in, and I'm basically paying financing on these because I borrowed money to build these houses. What you're doing is you're creating a risk scenario which depresses people from wanting to build more properties. Because this is just a huge liability.
It's another interesting part. Late and unpaid empty home taxes are subject to penalties of 5% and daily interest.
It's like they're the government and they can just take your shit.
And if you refuse to declare, or the declaration was not submitted, let me rephrase that, you not only have to pay the 1.25 when they come for you, but you also have to pay a $250 by law ticket.
I have a
question. Go ahead.
So this would apply. Let's say I live in Shitstainawan.
Shitstainistan.
No, Shitstainawan because it's Saskatchewan. And,
on Skid Row.
Yeah, and I live in I farm winter wheat, motherfucker. But I want to have. I've made good money farming winter wheat. People like their oyster crackers. And I want a condo in Vancouver because the weather's nicer.
This actually has fucked over a lot of elderly people who live on they have cabins on the islands, but they live in like a little apartment here anywhere in the Lower Mainland, because it's not, their primary residence would be their apartment, but they own a secondary empty residence on the island where they have a lot more space, but it's in a city. You know, it's not like a cabin in the woods somewhere without amenities. It's like a cabin in a lake district or something like that. Where in their heads it's like, you know, when I get a bit too old or I have family visiting, we go there, right? They can't afford to go on big holidays, but they can afford that. Well, now they can't. They have to choose. Do we live in the city where the prices continuously going up, but we have medical coverage close at hand, or do we move to an island where we're isolated, but it's arguably affordable in certain areas?
You know,
and then you give up the other.
Yeah, you can't have a vacation home, in other words, in Canada without taking it up the ass.
This is going to provide powerful incentive to criminalize a great number of people who otherwise are good law-abiding citizen. This is almost irresistible, motivation to break the law.
Yes. Yeah, it is, because people are going to lie, or people are going to, I don't know, share deeds under multiple names to try to confuse.
Mom owns the cabin out on the island, and Dad owns the condo in the city.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll see elderly people divorce each other.
I was just going to say, it'll be just like those Nassau divorces.
Yep. Or the way we saw so many elderly people cohabit. Remember when that started in the 80s because of Social Security taxes?
Right.
Well, 90s when they actually implemented
it. Back in the marriage penalty days, people would get divorced and they would go to the Bahamas. They called them Nassau divorces there for a while. And they with the money they saved, they would have their Bermuda vacation or Bahamas vacation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely and if you want societal stability, which does seem to come part and parcel with people getting married, staying married.
Yeah.
Modeling marriage for other people. What do grandkids make of grandma and grandpa just living together after they get a divorce? Well, you know, sometimes grandma and grandpa are more important than mom and dad. You know,
I have no idea.
Yeah, for what? For what? Because mom and dad, they suck. But grandma and grandpa, they're great. And grandma and grandpa
spoil the shit out of them.
Yeah, and they're not, and they get away with not being there when they wake up in the middle of the night, throw up all over the bed, and spike the 102-degree fever if they're lucky.
I'm not lucky that way, unfortunately. But
I think you kind of have the vomit icon floating around over your head.
That's not unfair.
If they're gonna shit the bed or throw up in the bed, it's
I'm good
on
at
my
cleaning
watch.
that stuff up.
But vacation homes are a big goddamn thing in the United States. A huge thing. You know, people have a summer home at the beach. They rent it out for, but it's a rental investment, but it's not rented by one individual. For months, it's a commercial venture.
Well, Airbnb's changed things a lot too.
Yeah, and there are a fair number of people like at the beach we go to that have switched to Airbnb. But depending on how you craft the law, you could fuck that market right up.
The government can screw up anything it wants to screw up quite easily, because I mean, it just like with the employment thing, if you make it impossible for people to be fired effectively, that's a strong disincentive to hire people who might be on the margins. You don't want to take the risk of hiring somebody if you know that might not work out, if you know you're going to end up paying them for 6 months no matter what you do. Similarly, in terms of housing, a lot of things that we could do to make things better. Because I did ask, what can we do to make things better? Getting the government's foot off of our necks would be a really great thing in terms of housing, because I do think the market would fix a lot of this stuff. But it's not just the stuff we've talked about. It's also being able to evict people when they've objectively done something wrong, rather than being forced to house them for 6 months.
And I don't know what happened to this, but co-ops used to be a thing in the 90s. And I think they were slowly phased out because the land is valuable, and people sell to developers, and then they built at market apartments. But something like that is very good. It's excellent for people first coming to Canada. It's good for younger people. It's good for families where you have lower income, but it's not free housing. It's not anything. It's just allowing people to have a home that they take care of, and is much more affordable than, say, market rental. But it seems that a lot of places here where there's currently the old co-ops from like the 70s and 80s and 90s, the land is so valuable for condos that they are just nobody wants to keep them here, right? And then of course then you're dealing with, well, if you keep them there, isn't that not government intervention, right? Because they're to stopping people from purchasing to develop into whatever they want to develop. But I'm wondering if that won't help things by creating more of these areas. Would that not help people get into the market? Bring younger people into the city, or we get more families or something like that. I don't know.
Well, if businesses are having trouble getting people to work, you'll be surprised how fast the government will do something.
There was that issue. There's quite a few areas here. This is pre-COVID and everything, where they actually had to change their hours and stop serving dinner and doing all sorts of things, and a couple of bars closed because younger people, those who usually are part of the service industry, have to move further out into the suburbs.
Yes.
And they just can't be bothered to come in. It's just either if they have to do a closing shift, it's going to be 2 a.m. by the time they get back. There's no more buses. That means they have to either cab, which is prohibitively expensive, like $100 one way, or they have to get a car, which means then they have to put money into gas and insurance and everything like that. So a lot of people opt I'll rather have 3 or 4 day AM shift jobs throughout the week, part-time work, than have an evening work in the city, or even not even in the city. I'm not talking about even downtown, but on the west side.
Well, what do you think about, I've seen enough of the fine Canadian TV where the Property Brothers and all these sorts of people run around Toronto making houses. There are a lot of houses that have income units, so you buy a house that has an income unit. If the market's working the way it's supposed to, a lot more people would probably want to create those types of things.
And that is back to your Houston zoning issue. That's a zoning issue here. You can't create that without being in a certain zone, or pay through the nose to get all sorts of licenses.
Get rid of it. Other than the fact that you need to have a window you can get out of during a fire. Basic safety stuff, fine. But a lot of the ridiculous stuff, which is really not... it was really just a cartel type thing. We don't want those kinds of people in our neighborhood, is what it really boils down to.
There's a lot of
so
classism.
they prevent you from renting out your pool house.
Yeah, there's a lot of classism involved in it. It's probably more classism than racism.
There's also the fact that if you watch those shows where it's talking about the secondary incomes, they're wanting to charge $2,000 for a 1-bedroom basement apartment.
No, because the housing shortage is such that the market will bear it.
Yeah.
If you get the government out of the zoning and you make it more possible for people who have the spare, there's all kinds of shit. You can't have a second kitchen in a lot. It
is ridiculous. Just let me get a lot and start selling tiny house spots to people. I'll happily set up an RV.
There was a second kitchen in this house so that it would be an absolute in-law apartment.
Yeah.
We were absolutely prohibited. You have to get like a landlord's license and declare your home a duplex. And this area is zoned for...
That's so stupid.
Yes,
it's all happy horse shit.
It is happy horse shit. And there are ways around it. But those are the ways that people end up going around it, end up burning down a block because they then stick hot plates in things that are not as safety conscious as an actual inspected kitchen or kitchenette would be. They're cooking out of an electric skillet and grandma forgets to turn it off and the wall melts and the wires catch fire.
They're using the one I love is the Christmas tree light thing as an extension cord.
Yeah.
To a hot plate.
Oh yeah.
I would love to keep talking about all this stuff, but we have hit the 2-hour mark plus about 5. No, I would love. I'm sorry I didn't leave more time for the discussion part at the end and showed too many graphs for too long. But I think the main thing is if the government got out of the business, when we say do something, we mean do less of whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah,
that's what I mean when I say the government could do something. And employers and small business groups and things like the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary Club, all of it, they need to just start telling local government, look, we're going to hold you accountable. You need to cut it out. Yes. And just let the market work. Anyway, does anybody have any final thoughts before we
I'll
shut
just
this down?
add this. Dale Carnegie was famous for saying, remember today is the tomorrow you worried about yesterday. I never really thought that was that profound. So I added a corollary to it. And so where he said, remember today is the tomorrow you worried about yesterday, I would add, and day before yesterday is the tomorrow you worried about 3 days ago when you were worried about the tomorrow that is now yesterday. So fuck off.
I got Craig Ferguson's opening theme in my head now. Tomorrow's just your future yesterday.
Oh, yes, and of course, Richard had, California was thinking about that, and they may still do it, but people like Elon Musk were smart enough to say, no, I'm not giving you 2% of everything I own. Why don't you just bite me, whether it's in California or not. We'll see how that goes. A lot of the smart big money got the hell out.
Yep.
Anyway, unless there's something else,
sure.
Anybody? Last call.
Sure.
Go ahead.
When you vote, you are exercising political authority. You're using force. And force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authorities are derived.
Thank you, Robert A. Heinlein.
My favorite literary quote. Fuck off.
It's good. I like Heinlein. What are you talking about?
I like that kind of force. The force of the citizen is the best force.
Yeah. But people have just been so blunted. They don't actually exercise it.
Well, come back tomorrow night. Lucky Poptart should be your host unless something changes. And with that, the zoo is closed. Good night.
Citizenship through service.
Would you like to